Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm your host, Liz Hyman, bringing the rescue boat to your sales challenges. In this ever-changing sales environment, it's easy for leaders to feel adrift. We're here to be the beacon guiding you to success. Each episode, I'm joined by top sales experts and practitioners who have navigated this waters and come out victorious. Together, we'll uncover the insights and strategies that will help you hit your sales targets and grow your business. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. We are on the Sales SOS podcast. Today, we're talking about building your sales organization from the ground up. And we're here to help you do it right because people make so many mistakes along the way. So we are your sales crew, your Sales SOS crew. And let me introduce to you who's with me today. We have John Way and Daryl Prell and Mike Simmons, Renee Bigelow, Bill Gannon, and Chris Bowen. So I think that hiring the right salespeople is probably one of the hardest things to do. And I work with founders all the time who say things like, I'm on my third person and they haven't sold anything yet. Or people who have several salespeople, but they'll say, can you help me? Because I haven't done a great job. Don't really have the right people, the right people in the right seats on the bus. And then I listen to their interview process, and I listen to the salespeople sort of manipulate them into believing things that aren't true. And I'm like, don't hire that person. And they're like, that person's great. I'm like, no, don't hire that person. They sound great. They've never done anything in their life, And so help me out here, you guys. How do you hire the right salesperson? How do you go? What should the process be? What are the things you have to watch out for? How do you pick different, again, there's no such thing as the unicorn salesperson who does everything really well. That doesn't exist. Some people do some things really well, and some people do other things really well. And the other piece of it is how much time does one person have to achieve what you're expecting them to achieve. So I'm going to pass it out to you. And it looks like for once, John wants to start. So
yeah, I do. John. So I can tell you what not to do. So let's start with that.
And I gather this is from personal experience.
Oh, you're probably hearing my voice. So I can tell you, especially I resonate with your story about a lot of these founders who are on their third salesperson and they're like, can't believe. My first thing about what not to do as a founder is that if you've never done sales before, you shouldn't be the person doing the interview. You need to get somebody else to do the interview. And I'll pass it off to the rest of the expert panelists here.
No, I think that's a great kickoff, John. The first item, right? Yeah, is how big is your org? Is this a first salesperson? Am I the hardworking CEO who's doing everything and making this decision? That's such a different decision place than the established company that already has the sales team out there. I mean, these are so different worlds. So why don't we start with the simple assumption of what is the job that has to be done? And how many customers does a new sales rep need to be able to call tomorrow? Maybe the answer is 0. Maybe they don't have to have anybody in their pocket. Maybe they just have to be good, lucid communicators because we have a complex SaaS solution that is going to require good, thoughtful communication. Maybe it's a much more, this is not a what you know, this is a who you know business, and I need someone who can call the top 30 decision makers in this realm. So often it's the horses for the courses that have to be hired. It should, I think the clearer you are on the task that has to be done, the direction it has to go in, then at least you're hiring with those skill sets in mind. I'll start.
So if that takes us back, hang on one second. If that takes us back to, you have to know what the job is, which means you probably should have mapped out the buyer journey. And you probably should have mapped out the sales process that matches the buyer journey and decided what we talked about in the last episode, which is, do I have a marketing team? What part of the journey does the marketing team handle? Do I have can I divide the rest of the journey up across multiple people, or is one person going to do the whole thing? What are those things that they have to do in my sales process at my company, not somebody else's? Don't go pull somebody else's job description and decide it matches. But what exactly do they have to do at my company? I can't figure out what the job is until I've answered those questions. Right? Okay, Mike.
I have a simple process to go through and do this stuff, and I do it over and over and over again. The only thing that adds additional scope is steps that we might add to the end of the process. But the first mistake I think people make is they go into the conversation thinking, I want to figure out reasons to hire this person. I want it to fit because I like their resume and I need to solve for the problem. And I'm going in thinking things will be good. That first conversation should be all about fit between you and that person. Do you see a scenario where you could potentially work with each other? Could they be inside the organization and provide some value? The second one, if they pass that, should be a scenario test. And for an account executive, I like to use discovery call because it's really basic. Like those are basic skills. You don't have to have a lot of background on the business. You don't have to have a lot of this technical knowledge. The thing I'm looking for there is curiosity. Can we ask questions? Can we listen? Can we validate understanding? Those kind of things. But there's a scenario that happens. And what I like to add at the end of that scenario is coaching. Because when I coach and I provide direct feedback, I'm looking to see how you respond. Do you lean into the feedback or do you get defensive? Because if you get defensive and you're not coachable, you're eliminated. I don't have the time for you because this stuff is going to be really hard. And then that third phase might be an introduction to the CEO of the business or the founder of the business so that we can determine founder fit on that side. Or if it's a team of people that they're going to be working with, I want to get them introduced to other members of the team. And just that, so think of it just like your sales process. You've got stages where each time they go through a gate, your probability of sale increases, your probability of success increases. Don't solve for the end problem, the proposal, like we all want to jump into in that first meeting. Let's warm up. So that's my simple process to go through this, and I can apply it in a scenario in customer success. It would be more like you're doing a program review for a customer, and we'll provide the data, or an account manager, those kind of things. But that scenario is key for me because I want to see the skills.
I want to just push back on you a little bit, Mike.
Perfect.
And yes. Yes, and that there's two things. One is think about your values when you're hiring. I have had so many conversations with people talking about salespeople that are obnoxious, that can't get along with the rest of the team. Like, if they don't share your values, don't hire them. Salespeople are not awful people. We don't have a whole different set of criteria for salespeople. So in that, Mike, I agree with you. But the pushback is this. What we know about sales organizations is the more diverse they are, the more likely they are to hit their sales goals. So we don't want to hire people we don't like, and we don't want to hire people that don't fit into our values, but they don't have to necessarily be a bud I want to go out drinking with, right? So,
but where's the pushback? Like, what did I mistakenly say I was looking for buds to go drinking with?
Just on the hiring people you like, because sometimes people who are different than us, we think I can't hire somebody who's different than us, but people who are from different experiences come at problems differently. And so when we add diversity in, we create more success often. So
let me confirm.
Be careful about the difference between hiring people you like and want to work with is not necessarily hiring people who are like you.
The cool thing about it is I don't like people. So it's rare for me to want to have like them as a success criteria.
This is why Mike and I are friends, because we just don't like people.
It's what we're testing for is fit. Do we see a scenario where they fit into the business? And that would get into that alignment piece. So if I misspoke and said that I hire based on the way I like, whether or not I like people, that is not correct. It has nothing to do with that. The place where it's a non-starter is if I provide feedback and you demonstrate a negative reaction, and which is an indication of external locus of control and a lack of coachability. And I just don't have the time and patience to work with that because we're doing really hard things.
Yeah.
To that point, Mike, I think one of the real knee jerks I always get, a real trigger for me, is a comment, and then during the interview process, the rationalization for why what I do is right, and it doesn't always have to be pointed, but even these soft rationalizations every time should be a red freaking flag that you are going to have one miserable sales experience with this person as the pressure begins to increase and the demands begin to, and all of that always, thanks for the advice. The reason I did it, see, is, I've been there, done it, and agonized it. And you want people that can listen and actually absorb and just might be wrong. Imagine that. Listen like speak like you're right, but listen like you're wrong. Right?
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say from Mike, I was going to say that one of the things that I would do is if you give them feedback in that meeting and they're going to have other conversations, did they apply it in those next conversations? Because them just hearing you has nominal value, right? Like they actually have to take that and then show that, hey, I have not only the ability to listen, but I also have the ability to change whatever it was that you had given me feedback on, right? I think it's important to have that type of follow-up in the process.
To build on Chris's point, I've had that happen. Like where they pass in that first conversation where you see some fit, and then they're just nervous as all get out in this scenario. Like they want a job. They want a job. They want to provide for their family. They want to join the organization. They're really excited. And sometimes, depending on stage of organization, you're hiring people who are really young and or even later, and they just got let go. Like whatever it is, they get nervous. When you provide the feedback and you give them another chance to perform, if depending on how they respond to the feedback, you give them another chance to perform and they demonstrate an ability to do the work. Now, you've got somebody who is interested, who listens, who will drive, and you're still going to make a mistake on some of these hires. And then you've got to let people go. And that kind of sucks that it'll happen. But I think that is an awesome thing to see, is when people take the coaching and apply it in that next iteration, if they get that chance. Great stuff.
Coachability. Go ahead, Daryl.
There's two things I want to build on what has all been said here. I love Mike's framework, his 3-step approach. Brilliant. 1,000%. Building on that, a couple more things I like to ferret out in the process. One of the things I'd love to do is actually ask them a silly question like, so tell me, who do you follow when it comes to sales influencers and why? And it sounds silly, but I've seen this happen over and over again. And I don't care if it's a podcast, a book author, what have you. And I've had so many people literally had to hold their hands and say, well, like, have you read a sales book lately? Who was that? I want to know that I'm hiring somebody that is committed to their craft. If they don't have the time to do any kind of investment in improving their skills on their own podcast, blogs, TikToks, YouTube, whatever, then I'm not interested in them. That's just for me. That tells me that they're committed or they're not. The next thing is I want to see their craft in action. So I want to see if they start actually trying to close me by asking me probing questions to understand the situation and understand what it is I'm trying to achieve. I love that when I see that, and then I'll have fun. I may push back and see if they do any kind of objection handling and how they handle it. Right now, to Mike's point, if they're not coachable, if they do that, I don't have any interest in them. It's just full stop, done, and end of story. But if they are coachable, I've had conversations in job interviews where we go, I stop and say, I see what you're doing there. That's gap selling. Love it. How'd you come about that? Right. And so that's the kind of thing that I do to help find the professionals. So that's just me sharing that.
What are some, go ahead, Renee.
I'd like to, Liz, I agree so much with everything that everyone said, but you brought up something that I'd really like to add on to when you brought up values, and making sure that, I mean, you should be doing this with any employee, right? But I think that it's critical with salespeople, and I'll add 3 points onto this that I think are really important. Your purpose and your values are essentially like planting a flag that people are going to recognize when they're like looking to join a tribe, right? We're tribal. Anthropologically, we're tribal. We're looking to join people who think like us, right? And purpose and values is that flag that you're planting in the ground. And your sales hires should be able to articulate what they believe around your purpose. Obviously, until they come into the company, there are things that they aren't going to completely understand, but they should be able to articulate what attracts them to their purpose and what they believe around that purpose and how they think it applies to people who would be interested in joining that tribe. Your sales team is part recruiter to your tribe, right? So they're getting people to want to join it, and they need to kind of understand those things. And then they need to be able to articulate things around your values and how they would make decisions based on that. And that comes into play because they're going to be the conduit between you and your customers for values, right? They're going to be where the rubber meets the road, where decisions get made around those types of things, whether it's discounts or meeting deadlines or whatever those things are. That's where that happens. And then the second I would say is you have to think of that person in the context of, and this is just one way that I do it, is does this person represent my brand? If they are the only person there, how do they represent my brand in the way that I want it? And I always just use this one context. There's a trade show. You are sending this one person. They are the only person anyone will see and interact with around your brand. Are they representing it well? And then can they do that internally? Do they work internally to get the buy-in that they need to get things moving forward? There's always that sales rep that gets every deal done because they're well liked internally too, right? So those are the kind of the 3 things. Can they do that internally? Are they the person that you think can represent your brand well when they're the only person? And then do they understand how to recruit into your tribe by identifying with purpose and values?
I love that. I love that. I don't know if you guys have something else that you specifically wanted to add, but I wanted to ask we only want to talk about this for a few minutes more, but I wanted to ask about some of the specific questions that you think really get you insight into the person. So like there's 2 questions that I always ask. One is, if we do trade shows in the company that I'm helping hire for, I always ask them, tell me about trade shows. How do you do them? And I listen, and if they don't have a before, during, and after in their scenario, I ask them, what do you do before? What do you do during? What do you do after? And that tells me a couple of things. One is, do they have a process? Do they really think in a process about all of the steps to do any project? And 2, are they going to, if we do trade shows, are they going to show up, do a lot of fancy talk, and then do nothing? I've literally had people say trade shows are nonsense. I don't do them. I'm like, thank you very much. You won't be working here. The other question that I always ask is, okay, you get up this morning and your funnel is empty. You got nothing in your pipeline. Tell me what you're going to do. Like, what are you going to do for the next week? And if they can't answer that with some really specific, I'm going to call, I'm going to, these are the people I'm going to call. I'm going to go look for some referrals. I'm going to go march down the street and knock on doors. I don't know, but they better have a really good answer to what happens when their funnel dries up, because despite our best efforts, sometimes our funnels dry up. So those are 2 that I always ask. What are some of the ones you guys always ask because they give you more insight?
So the one I love to ask is, what's your preferred sales methodology, sales framework, and why? And it's amazing. 9 times out of 10, they do not have an answer. Right. And I don't care what the sales framework is. It's exactly what you said, Liz. I want to know they have a process and that they know how to follow it. They know how to work an account, especially for when they wake up, to your point, Liz, and their pipe is dry and they're like, okay, what can I fall back on other than going, woe is me? I want to know they've got a framework that they have vetted, they have developed, they have refined, and it works for them. That's all I want to know. Great question to ask.
Chris, go
We have a
ahead.
caller. They have a question.
No, I don't. I am, but I have to make that call in a minute. So,
Okay.
I think when you're looking at questions to ask, I always want them to walk me through from beginning to end of a full sales cycle. What was the timing? How did it come in? If it came in via a marketing lead, okay, fine. If it came in via their own efforts, how did that happen? Right. So I can understand, how do you actually go about the work? Right. And then where did you run into, if it's a significant size deal, when did you run into problems? How did you work your way through that? Because if it's a significant size deal, I don't see any of those that ever go perfectly smoothly. Right. There's always something that makes them go sideways, at least for a little bit. So it's like being able to figure that out. How do you work through it? Who did you get involved? How do you use organizational resources that are available to you? That's not just technology, that's the people. How do you build those relationships? Because I'd rather you start building those earlier, because it's better to build them when you don't need them than need them and not have those things built yet, right? So y'all have probably heard me say this. Yeah, everybody thinks they understand sales because they see the outcome from sales. They don't really understand the work. So can you walk me through what that work looks like?
It's funny. We talk about sometimes ask them about a sale that didn't happen, right? Tell me about a real one that still sticks in your craw. Why did it go south? And I found that salespeople always can go chapter and verse, especially when you're interviewing them, about why things went south, right? Marketing dropped the ball, product dropped the ball, engineering dropped the ball. Very rarely do they drop the ball, but you get it. They have a thorough litany of reasons why something went south. I love to shift gears after that. I said, so tell me something. On a sale you've just won recently, and they think up the name, I said, why did they say yes? And it's so funny to watch how they sputter. Like, well, I mean, we put a really competitive price on the table, and all of a sudden it isn't the strength of the team or the product profile or the fact that engineering pulled something at the last minute, or you combined with another asset to create something larger. It has to. I don't think enough time is spent on the sales side actually understanding why customers say yes. We spend an awful lot of time finding out why customers said no. And I think salespeople that can recite with sincerity why something went well and how it came together is a good quality.
And I'll tell you, one of the things, when I lose a deal, I always look at it as my fault, right? Like that's just always been the way that I am. Like, I'm the one that's quarterbacking this thing. If we lose, it's because of me. There may be a whole lot of reasons that we could have done things differently, but I take it as I didn't direct people in the right way to get there, right? And that could be a timing issue. It could be my lack of understanding of the skill sets that I had available to me to help work on some of these things. Because I don't want to have all the answers, but I want to have enough of the answers to where I can say that makes sense or that doesn't, and hopefully turn it into a cohesive narrative.
What did we learn along the way, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if you're not learning, well then, okay, good luck.
Good luck.
This business changes way too fast for you not to be able to be intellectually nimble.
Mm-hmm.
The question I ask that usually reveals more than anything else, at least for me, is this one. And I'll ask it a couple of times throughout the process, as one of our friends might say, but it's, what questions do you have for me?
Have you done any research?
It will reveal research. It will reveal interest. It will reveal what's important. It reveals so much. And now at the same time, I'm going through an interview process with a candidate right now, and their response to that was, well, I don't really have any questions now. Those questions typically come up when I'm in the business. And for that role that we're looking for in that space for this area of expertise, that's an okay response. It's not ideal from my response or from my standpoint, but I'm not going to disqualify him based on it because there were some other things that came up in the interview. But it's, what questions do you have for me? And then just sit back and make them sit on it and reflect on the questions. Some will start with comp plan. Some will start with benefits. Some will start with performance. Some will start with something else related to the market, but it'll reveal some really interesting things.
And usually when I've gotten asked that type of question, I'm usually going into, okay, what are the things that separate in your business those people that are the most successful from those that are average and those that underperform? What is it that they do differently?
A sales rep asked that question. That's brilliant.
Because that's what I care about, right? Like, I want to know, what are the people that are doing well? If you can't tell me that there's anybody that's blowing out their number, then I'm going to question whether or not you really have an understanding of how you got to that number in the first place, right?
And even asking that other question of what happened to the last person that was in the role,
right? Why is this role now open, right? Yep. Is it because, hey, we're on our fourth CSO in the past 5 years? Oh, so you all just churn through them, and
well, because I just hired 3 account executives. My last 3 account executives haven't been able to sell anything, and I figured, well, if I missed on the first 3, number 4 has got to be great.
Right. Yep. John, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was going to say questions that really forces them to kind of troubleshoot a problem. I like the exercise that you do, which is analyzing the funnel or analyzing the pipeline. So one question that I found that's really insightful is asking them, hey, you have X number of proposals out there, 50% of the proposals out there, and they're all ghosting you. Tell me what you would do. How would you figure out what's wrong? That to me would tell me a lot about, to Daryl's point, like, do they really understand the sales process? And how quickly are they willing to be like, I'm just going to shoot a proposal out there versus like actually qualifying someone?
So I have one more question. Go ahead, Daryl.
Then this is fast. I love to ask them, so who in our organization did you call about this position before this interview? Like, rarely do I get a good answer on this one, but when they have called, say, who, how did you find them, which usually LinkedIn, what have you, that tells me they've got a hunter's, ability built into them, that they understand they need to actually do the background before they talk to the, so-called decision maker. Love asking that question and just loving their response. The Bill's point earlier about how they respond often, it's fantastic. It's just a fun question to ask. It's probably a mean one to ask, but it's a fun one to ask.
It's a great one. So I have one more thing, and then I want to jump to our next topic. So if I'm working with a smaller company, I always ask the salesperson, especially if they've been at a large company, at an enterprise, I ask them, how will they be able to function in an organization that doesn't have a lot of sales support? So this company doesn't have a sales ops team. This company doesn't have a sales enablement team. How will you function without those tools? And the answer I get most often, and it's always the answer that makes me say this person is not a good fit, is they've been at an enterprise and they say, they never really helped us very much. We had to do everything ourselves. We didn't really get help at Microsoft. And I'm like, you're not going to make it here. So that's one of my favorites to ask is, just to get them thinking about what has their team really done for them and what do they require in order to be successful. And that's a wrap of this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope today's episode has equipped you to navigate the sales seas with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday or share your questions on YouTube or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep sailing towards those sales goals. I'm Liz Hyman, your captain here at the Sales SOS podcast, saying smooth sailing and successful selling.